Hey guys, this is Jethlin 2020. Today's video is going to be me transferring my beat up destroyed Hubsan. This is the 107C version, it has the camera. The C version does come with the 8.5mm motors, and I'm going to be transferring this, the internals and the motors and everything from this to my Phoenix Flight Gear 110mm carbon fiber micro H frame. Now on the packaging and on their website, I got this from rcdrones.com, on the website it says 8mm version, and there was some confusion about that, but I did call them, this is a typo, it is for the 8.5mm motors that come with the Hubsan. They also have the 7mm version if you have the 107L, I believe it. 107L has no camera, uses 7mm motors, so if you have that version of the Hubsan, you would get the 7mm frame. I went with the 110mm, which is still fairly small in comparison to the Hubsan, maybe slightly larger, because I do want to add at some point FPV, and I think I can fit a camera on there. I got the top plate. I got the full size, the standard top plate for the 110mm, also in carbon fiber, which I'm going to try and squeeze a camera on there at some point. We'll see. But for now, I'm going to be using the Hubsan flight controller board. I did buy new motors. Some of these still work. And I bought new props. I bought the clear props. I'll leave links to all the places you guys can purchase this in the description down below. So if you measure these motors here from the Hubsan, these are 8.52. The ones I ordered, which are supposed to be replacement takeoff motors from rcdrones.com, actually come in a little smaller than that at 8.47, 8.45. So they're slightly smaller. I really would have liked to, and what I wanted to get was these 8.5. They generate a little more torque, a little more speed, I believe. So we'll see how these work. If not, I'm going to run these. I have two more of these Hubsans. I could pull motors off of that. But we'll see how these run. Now, the only other problem I could see myself running into is the wires that come with these replacement Hubsan motors are not that long, and when you run the 110mm frame, because it is slightly longer, I'm not sure if they're going to make the board. They may. We're going to find out in just a little bit. These are the grommets, the 8.5mm grommets that you slide the motors through, and then they clip into the these little arms here. Those are pretty good. Comes with also, the kit comes with some double-sided tape and some foam. I also bought the 110mm drone skirt. That just kind of makes it look pretty, covers up the space between the top plate and the frame. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to use that. We'll see. So let's get to building. First thing I'm going to do is remove the two screws that hold the body cover on. Those are on the bottom. You got one on each side. Now, I do recommend probably getting yourself a little. Screws are pretty small. Get yourself a little magnetic tray. It helps. You definitely do not lose parts when you have this. See, I just dropped that screw and it stuck right to the plate. Also, you can magnetize your screwdriver with this. If you just hold a regular screwdriver against it for a few seconds, it becomes magnetized. So that really helps out as well. And if you guys suddenly go missing a screw or a part, always check these motors, because look, they are magnetized and the screws end up on there, so always look there first. I'm going to pull the little rubber kind of landing gear off there. Those just pop right off. Got 4 of those. As you can see, this is like my third body where I broke this leg. That's what made me decide to go to the carbon fiber. And after a few times of replacing this, I have another video, I'll put a link to that as well, where I show you how to replace the body, because it's not as easy as just swapping out the body. You have to take out the flight controller, and you have to unsolder these motors, because they don't fit through this arm right here without taking these wires off the board. So doing that a few times gets to be a pain in the you-know-what. So I decided to get the carbon fiber and hopefully prevent myself from breaking these arms again. So once that's off, now this body here should be free. You have to unsnap it from the arms like that. So we're going to use a little solder. Actually, I could probably just pull this off. I could probably just unscrew these. There's 4 screws holding the battery holder compartment on there. And I think I'm going to reuse this on this frame here. So we're going to try and save that. We got these 4 screws. Once you get that, now the battery compartment will come right out. Actually, that's just the holder. I'm not going to reuse this camera, so if there's a way you could just pop this out here. Make sure you take the camera out, just in a little groove there. Reach under there. Be careful with the board if you are going to reuse this. Go nice and easy, and that just pops right out. Now you've separated your body. Bottom half of the body. Now for the flight controller, be very careful here because you are going to reuse this, and there's 2 screws that hold this together, one here, one here. And these screws seem to be a little smaller than the ones that hold the body together, so just take note of that. Now what I recommend doing as well, and I'll leave a picture here, or you can go back to my older video, the video I have where I do the how to fix a Hubsan, how to replace the Hubsan motor. I have a reference picture on how to place your motor wires, because it does make a difference, and they have to be in the same order. The color wires make a difference because you have motors that go in clockwise direction, motors that go in the counterclockwise direction. So if you look here, let's see. Try to put this back on. This is the front of the Hubsan here. This is the front. These are the front motors here. So if you're looking at it from underneath, you have your black and white wire to the right. And if you look at the board there, you can see the black wire goes on the top. It switches here. I don't know if you can see it. The black wire is actually on the top. White wire is on the bottom. Then on the left side, you have your blue and red wires. You have the blue wire going to the top, red wire going to the bottom. And then on the bottom, on the back side, right, you have your red and blue. So you have red going to the bottom, blue going to the top. And then on back left side, and remember this is looking at it from the bottom up, you have your white wire at the top and your black wire at the bottom. Now there's also just the copper wires that come in and go to the attachment points above and below the motors, and those are for your LED lights. So if you're going to reuse those, take note of those as well. Those don't have to actually come off the board though, because they could slide right through this groove here where the motors cannot. Although if you're not going to use your body, if you're not going to use this body and you are transferring to the carbon frame, you might just be able to crack this open and slide the motor at the bottom instead of having to unsolder everything. So if you're not going to reuse this body and you don't need it anymore, I would just do that probably. It all depends on what you feel like doing there. I'm going to take the LED lights. They slide up from the top. You want to push them through. Push them up first. You want to get some slack in these wires, so just pull them up like so. That's the motor wires. Then you get your copper LED wires underneath that. Get those out, slide them up and around. Once you get the slack, you can push forward and pop them out the top. And these will just come around like so. Now we'll go around to all 4 ports. Okay, the LEDs are free. Now I got to decide whether I'm just going to crack this open and pull the motors at the bottom or unsolder everything. My first instinct is telling me to just crack it open since I'm not going to use this again. But I do, kind of for video purposes, want to show you how to unsolder everything. But I think I'm going to take the shortcut. So if you do need to learn how to unsolder these motors and redo it, I'll leave a link below in the description or right up here on the screen. You can click on that to get to my video that shows you how to replace the motors onto the board. If you do just are coming here to replace the motors or need to know how to do that. So I'll leave that link. You guys can click on that. So this is not as easy as you might think. This original Hubsan body is pretty tough actually at these points here. So to get this out, you really have to do a little work. So I started by using a little clipper and cut parts of the struts, the frames off the struts here to loosen it up. Then I'm just taking a flathead and prying in between the little grooves and trying to crack the rest of it away. But it is proving to be a little more difficult than I thought. So maybe soldering is the way to go. We'll see how far I get. Okay, so what I went ahead and did was used a little pair of snips, and I basically cut these struts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just pulled this bottom piece back, and now you could slide the motor out the bottom. And I would only do this if you're not reusing this frame. Obviously, if you could switch into the carbon fiber, like I said, you could do this method. I thought it would be a lot easier than unsoldering and resoldering the motors back onto the board, but I'm beginning to have second thoughts because this is actually a pain in the ass. But there's one free, and we're going to work our way around and do the rest. If I had a better pair of snips instead of these cheap Harbor Freight stuff, this would be a lot easier. That's what you get for cheaping out. If you're doing this kind of work all the time, invest in the proper tools. It makes a difference. Be careful not to cut your motor wires. That would kind of defeat the whole purpose. Okay, go. And get yourself a flathead and kind of put it in the groove there and just give it a little twist. But be careful of your motor wires because they're right there and you don't want to rip those out or break them. Okay, that's motor number 2. Also, be sure to take your magnetic, if you have a magnetic tray, or even if you're just putting the screws on the table, because these motors are going to want to pick up those screws every time you get near that tray. Alright, so we finally got the flight controller free from the frame. The motors are all out. I'm going to give them a little test to make sure they still work after that abuse they just went through. And then we're going to unsolder this camera board. We don't need that anymore. That'll also save on some weight. We're not going to bother with this anymore. We're just going to use the flight controller. Now this is where this third hand thingamajiggy comes in handy. I actually picked this up at Harbor Freight too. It's kind of cheap. I think it was like $8. But this actually does come in handy. It works. It has a magnifying glass up top, which you can't really see now with LED lights attached. It has these alligator clips, and there's a spot to put your soldering gun. And there's a weighted base tray for parts, but I'm using my magnetic tray like I showed you guys before over here in the corner. So now, when you're working with these small parts, these small circuit boards and tiny little solders, tiny little joints and stuff, you really need something to hold it while you hit these joints. Just warm it up, and you're just going to, once that solder melts, you just pull that free like that, and another one over here. Let your solder gun get good and hot, and that's it. Now the camera board's removed, so you're not going to need that. I mean, if you guys want to keep it on, just keep it attached. Don't follow this step. But like I said, for my purposes, I am going to do some FPV, so I'm going to get myself a 5.8 camera at some point and some goggles and mess around with that a little bit and see how that works on this. I've seen people do it before, but there weren't too many videos out there in detail showing you step by step, so that's what I'm trying to do here for you guys. And when I get to the FPV portion of it, I'll put up a video for that as well. Alright, so now's the time to come up with a plan for how we're going to work this frame, where we're going to put everything. And this is the battery case from the Hubsan, and I just found it actually fits really well right back here. On the back of this, or the top of this, however you look at it, this battery plate, there's these two tabs, and they fit perfectly in the 110mm frame from here to here, so it fits nice and perfect, nice and tight right there. So once you get that in there, there's very little movement there. So I think what I'm going to do is just hot glue this down. I'm not even going to use the screws. kind of snaps right in there. I don't know if you guys can see this, but those little tabs now stick up just above the frame on either side, and it makes for a nice tight fit in there. See that? Nice tight fit. And then you have a place to put your battery, so you don't have to use the Velcro. You could actually just stick it right in there like the original Hubsan. And we just got to worry about balancing out the getting your center of gravity right and correct. So maybe we'll move the flight controller up forward a little bit to balance that out. So let's try a little hot glue. I'm going to put that on right there. Okay guys, so here's something I just found out. And I'm sorry for that fan noise if you guys hear that in the background now. It's hot as hell in here, so I had to put it on. I'm working in my workshop, my shed, which is does not have air. So if you're going to use this, we can still do this, the battery holder. But if you're going to use a top plate, either the standard or maybe not with the shorty might fit in front of the battery, but you're going to have to put the standoffs on first because the battery plate is going to cover that hole. And it actually works out nicely, and I'll show you why. So to put the standoffs on, I'm putting it through the smaller hole here in the frame, and you screw on the standoff like so. And there is some room to make it adjustable. It can slide back and forth a little bit. So you're going to screw that on nice and firm. Don't overdo it. This is only plastic. And then now, when you flip it over, you see the screw from the standoff there. And on the bottom of the battery case, that screw kind of fits right in that groove there perfectly. So we're just going to I'm going to end up hot gluing it, and it's going to fit right in there like so. And those two notches I showed you before fit right on either side of the frame. And you'll see this little tail piece of the battery holder kind of hangs right off the back. So we're going to hot glue that down just like that. And you do have provided double-sided tape and Velcro and fishing wire, but we're not going to use that yet. So we got the hot glue on, and place like so. Get it nice and straight and even. And once this dries, all this will come off nice and easily. That's it. Perfect. So now the board, the battery holder is connected to the frame. Like so. Standoff is through. Once that hot glue dries, you can just scrape it off. So I do think it'll be easier to put the grommets on first and place the motors in, and then worry about the board placement. Now you do want the board in the same orientation as it was in the original Hubsan, with the battery wire connections facing up. And you'll see the chips, they should face up. They should be facing to the top. So if you're mounting to the frame here, the top side of the frame, you want it in this orientation just like this. So the motor orientation is also correct, with the blue and red wires going to front right and rear left. That way the gyro calibration remains correct. So I'm going to push those in. Now you do kind of got to hold up top here. You don't want to break that arm off, even though it is carbon fiber. And just kind of jiggle it, give it a little wiggle back and forth, and they'll snap in nice. Just be careful not to rip those wires off the board. You're going to be doing some soldering yourselves. And the motors do kind of like to stick together, so be careful there too. Same thing, black and white goes to front left. Little jiggle. Just be careful here because it is a little tight, so you don't want to pop those off. This one's a little tight here. So once you get your board mounted, it should look like this. The battery wire connection should be on top. The motor and all those connections should be underneath. I'm going to mount my LEDs. I'm going to do red to the rear and blue to the front. And I'm not going to use this for now until I replace the motors, because I don't want to crush those wires. And when I do replace the motors, I'll end up running them through these slots here the motor wires. That way they're not pinched off. So for now, we're just going to run it like this. I'll put the top plate on. So make sure you put your standoffs through. Do not over tighten them. Run the screws from the bottom. These are just made of plastic, so they're nice and easy. I would hand tighten, and maybe at the end, if you need to, just very lightly flathead screwdriver just to tighten them down. I used a little hot glue to mount the flight controller to the frame. Another thing I should mention, in order for me to get the center of gravity a little more forward, what I did was I snipped out this little piece of plastic off the battery holder. This little piece of plastic used to be in the front here, and it would prevent the battery from being moved all the way forward. But now when you put it in, you could actually slide it forward to change your center of gravity. So I can move that now much further forward than before. Previously it only went to that point there, so the center of gravity was a little more posterior. Now we push it up and you can change that center of gravity to where it's needed. Okay, the LEDs have been hot glued on, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. The only thing I might do is change the location. I may end up putting them underneath, so that way when the craft's in the air you can actually see the LEDs from underneath. That would have made much more sense, but I just don't feel like undoing it now for the video. But after I'm done, I probably will switch those to the bottom side. It just makes more sense to have them underneath. So there you have it. And kudos to anyone who noticed that I had this motor mounted upside down. I just fixed it. So there you have it. Now I'm just going to put the props on. And remember, you do have A's and B's, so they have to go on in the proper order. The A's should go in the back left and front right, while the B's go in back right, front left. Before that, I'm going to put the top plate on. Again, not too tight. You're just working with plastic here. Get yourself a small flathead screwdriver, that way you don't overdo it. And you do have about 1/4 inch wiggle room to adjust this if you need to move it forward or back. I'm going to use this at some point for a camera. Now I also purchased these micro motor protector shoes, and they come in different colors for the 8.5mm motors, and they just look like that, and they slip right over the bottom here of the motors, and they have a little cutout for the wires to fit into. So make sure you use that, otherwise you pinch your wires. Now these are for the 8.5mm motors, which I have in here, and it says it may require some. It says you may use some hot glue, but not required. Now I'd say it's definitely required, because these just fall right off. So I'm going to place a little dab of hot glue in there to hold these guys on. Gives you a little landing platform. You can do that. You can use those, or you can just go with the provided foam and make yourself a little cushion. Cut it out a little square and just place it right on the bottom of the motor. I may end up going with that eventually, but for now I'll try these. But definitely use the hot glue. These look like they were made on a 3D printer. You can see the leftover fiber kind of coils in there. You might want to pull that stuff out if you guys are going to use these, because it gets in the way a little bit. Prevents these from fitting properly. Make sure you're lining up this little notch right here with your wires, because that prevents those wires from getting pinched under this cap. Alright guys, so far this is what we have. It's looking pretty good. Let's just hope it's as sturdy as I expected it to be. And in the future, I'm looking to mount a little micro camera right here with a built-in transmitter. right up top here somewhere. Possibly even right in between in here. I believe there is one that you can get to fit right in there, but it has a separate transmitter that you just have to mount up top here. Let's put the props on and give this a nice test flight. Don't forget you have A and B props for clockwise and counterclockwise rotation. The B's go on the back right and front left, while the A's go on the back left and front right. Those are my A's. These are my B's. Once you have them mounted on, make sure they spin freely. And there you have it. Just have to clean up those wires. They were a little tight, so I don't know how clean it's actually going to get, because normally what you would do if the wires were long enough, you would take the provided fishing line and tie them off to the arms here, right along the carbon fiber arms. But these are a little too tight, so I think once I replace the motors with the new motors, they do sell motors with longer wires for the larger frames, then I'll make the corrections and make it all nice. Until these motors die, though, I'm just going to fly it like this and see how it works. So we're ready for our test flight. So now you should be able to just slide your battery right in the bottom, and I'm using the aftermarket. These are 500 milliamp batteries, so they're a little longer, but they still fit right in to the stock battery holder like so. Plug it in, our LED should light up. Yes, we got red in the back, we got blue in the front, and also I didn't realize that, but the board actually has 2 LED lights on it as well. Okay guys, the moment of truth. We're going to see how this, or if this guy flies. As you can see, we got the red LEDs in the back, blue in the front. I will change that orientation. I'm going to mount them underneath instead of on top so you can see it from the sky. You'll probably be able to see it anyway. But let's see if this works. Here we go. Now, I am flying this by looking through my camera, not at the drone, so it's going to be a little difficult. But let's see how this goes. Alright guys, I would call that a success. If you guys have any comments, please leave them down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Also, if you have anything to add to this that we may be able to add to this project in the future, I can make an updated video, please leave that in there if you guys have any ideas. Also, subscribe if you can. It will help me out a lot, and I appreciate you guys watching. This is Jethlin 2020. Thanks a lot. Take care now.